Okay, we're going to review the Reserve Component Survivor Benefit Plan, also known as RCSBP. We understand that the unit level isn't as familiar with this program, and we hope this presentation can help units become more knowledgeable and assist members and retirees. I'm Sergeant Dempsey, and I'm joined by Sergeant Broadstock. So we're going to review the RCSBP program, what it is up until when a beneficiary is claiming benefits for their survivor benefit plan, and we have a few frequently asked questions at the end. So currently, RCSBP is the only program that allows members a monthly annuity towards their beneficiaries when they pass. This isn't a lump sum like SGLI. It's going to be just a monthly payment to the beneficiaries, and the maximum coverage for the beneficiaries is 55% of the member's retired pay. And this is all dictated by law, so it's Title 10 USC Chapter 73. For a member to become eligible for this program, they need to have 20 years of satisfactory service. So if they are staying in past 20 years or retiring right at 20 years, they need to make an election for this program. We do have many people that have 20 years of total service years, but that doesn't necessarily mean they're satisfactory years. They need to have at least 50 points per year to make it a satisfactory year. Our office will notify the members when they're eligible 120 days after their 20th year of their R&R date. We notify them by a letter in the mail to their home of residence, and this letter will explain how to retrieve their 20-year letter along with how to make an RCSBP election. The letter will have the following instructions on how to go into MyPERS and access our NERP application. They can retrieve their 20-year letter from here as well. If a lot of members do have issues with the NERP application system issues, if that's the case, just inform them to submit a MyPERS incident to our office, and we'll help them make the RCSBP election through a MyPERS incident. This is what the NERP application looks like when a member logs in. There's helpful links to help the member gain more information on what the program is. But an important thing to take from this is in the middle of the slide, you'll see in bold, it'll say member and concur and non-concur. That's going to be where the member makes their election, and we'll go over what concur and non-concur is. And then at the bottom, you'll see attachments, and that's where they'll be submitting the required documentation in order to make the election. So each member needs to be logging into the NERP application when they're eligible to non-concur or concur. Now they're going to concur to an automatic election. And an automatic election is going to be if the member has dependents in MIL-PDS and they are concurring to the election, they're going to concur to an automatic option C. And we'll go over the options in a bit. If they don't have any dependents in MIL-PDS, they're going to be concurring to an automatic option A. Now, if they non-concur with these automatic elections, they need to fill out a 2656-5 within 90 days. If they do not fill out the form and make an election within 90 days, that automatic election will be made for them in MIL-PDS. To make the election to non-concur, as I said, they need to fill out a DD form 2656-5, and once that's signed and filled out, they'll either submit that back into the NERP application, or they'll send it to us in a MyPERS incident, or they can mail it to our office, and the address is right on the form. So we get a lot of questions if AGRs should be enrolling into RCSBP. So we have you could have an AGR that has 20 years of satisfactory service, but maybe they have 13 years of TAFMs and they're looking forward to an active duty retirement. They'll get notified that they're eligible. They can elect for RCSBP, but when they go to when they apply for their active duty regular retirement, they're going to elect for SBP, which is Survivor Benefit Plan. Once they do that, the RCSBP will be voided and the member will have no debt for the time that they had RCSBP from the time that they were elected it up until their active duty retirement. But if a member elects to not have RCSBP and does option A, what's going to happen is if they do not make it to an active duty retirement, so if their orders end at 15 years TAFMs and maybe they get out or they're not extended for their AGRs tour, they cannot make a new election until age 60. They can't make a new election solely on the reason that they're not having an active duty retirement anymore and they're going to a reserve retirement. So now we're going to go over the options that members can make when they select their election. So the first one is going to be option A, and this is declining the election until age 60. This means no coverage. So if the member were to pass away before the age of 60, their survivors will not receive any monthly annuity. But when the member goes to apply for retired pay age and they fill out the DD form 2656, they're going to fill out blocks 34 and 35 to either enroll or suspend SBP, Survivor Benefit Plan. Then we have option B, which is deferred annuity. So this annuity is for beneficiaries, begins on what would have been the member's 60th birthday. So if you have a member that elects option B at age 45 and then passes away 2 years later at age 47, their beneficiary cannot apply to receive the annuity for 13 years when the member would have reached age 60. Lastly, we have option C, which is immediate annuity, and this annuity begins immediately following the member's death. And this is regardless if the member was currently serving in the gray area awaiting pay for retirees. So if the member were to pass away 2 years after making an election for option C, the beneficiaries will be able to receive that monthly annuity immediately following the member's death. So once a member selects an option, they have to select a beneficiary if they're selecting option B or C. So the beneficiary options are spouse only, and this is going to be the current spouse that they're married to when they die. If they divorce and they remarry, so if when they were first notified of their election and they're married and they make a spouse coverage, they get divorced after the fact and then remarry, it's going to be the current spouse that is the beneficiary. The spouse will receive these payments for life, and the spouse will become ineligible though if they remarry before the age of 55. The member can also select child or children only. So this annuity is paid to children that reach the age of 18, or if they're a full-time student and unmarried, it can go up until 22. If the member has disabled children, those children can receive the payments for life if they're unable to support themselves. But we highly suggest that the guardians of the disabled children look into the special needs trust, as Survivor Benefit Plan can actually offset those benefits. The member can select spouse and children, but the children portion of this is a free add-on. It doesn't increase the premium, but the spouse is going to be the primary beneficiary. If the spouse becomes ineligible or passes away, then it's divided equally among the eligible children. And an important part to know that if a member has a child or children under a beneficiary, if they are, when they first make their election and they only have one child, and in the future they have more children, they do not need to contact our office or make a new election. This covers all the children that are going to be under the member's DEERS profile. We also have insurable interest. This is only available if the member is unmarried and has one child or no children. So if the member has one child, they can elect that one child under insurable interest, and that child can receive these payments for life. Or they can select a relative or a person that has a financial interest in their life, but they can only select one person for insurable interest. Lastly, we have former spouse and children. So if the member is initially notified they are eligible for RCSBP and they make their first election and they're divorced at the time, they can elect to have a former spouse and children as the beneficiaries. If the member gets divorced after they have already made an initial election, they have 1 year from the date of the divorce to change their election with a DD form 2656-1 to elect their former spouse and children to be the beneficiaries of the survivor benefit plan. Unfortunately, we've had this a lot where the member will pass away and the former spouse will reach out to us trying to claim the RCSBP, but the member never made an election changed their election within 1 year of the divorce. But on their court-ordered divorce decree, it specifically states that the former spouse is entitled to the survivor benefit plan, and it has to specifically state survivor benefit plan. It can't just say that the former spouse is entitled to retired pay. So once they show us that the divorce decree states they are entitled to the survivor benefit plan, unfortunately, the former spouse needs to go through the BCMR process in order to change the election for the RCSBP beneficiaries. So any member that's participating in RCSBP, whether they made an election or they were automatically enrolled, cannot change their election unless they have a life-changing event. And this life-changing event could be marriage, childbirth, divorce, remarriage, or death of a spouse. But they only have 12 months from the day of the event to make a new election. So if they want to change their election, they need to fill out and sign a DD form 2656-6 with the supporting documentations, which would be like a marriage certificate, divorce decree, a birth certificate, and they can send that to our office in a MyPERS instant or by mail. So insurable interest option, if someone does the insurable interest option, it's actually the most expensive option, but the law allows it that if you're under insurable interest, you can actually opt out of that at any time. You don't need to wait for a life-changing event to opt out of insurable interest. And lastly, if the member is receiving retired pay for 2 years, on that third year between the 25th month and the 36th month, they're able to cancel or terminate their SBP. But this has to be worked through DFAS. Anytime a member wants to change or cancel their SBP, they need to work it through DFAS if they're in retired pay. Our office can't change someone's election when they're already receiving their retired pay. So we've gone over a few things previously with the former spouse and making an election within 12 months. But a really good thing to take from this slide is that if a member has spouse coverage on their initial election and they get a divorce, that spouse coverage is going to be suspended automatically, but it's not going to be terminated. So this means that if the member gets divorced, it's going to be suspended, but if they get remarried, the spouse coverage is going to turn back on. So they have to make an election within the 12 months of the divorce or the remarriage to change their election if they don't want spouse coverage. Now, if they have spouse and child coverage when they go through the divorce, it's going to just turn to child only. So that the child will still be a beneficiary, but the spouse will no longer. So now we're going to go over how the RCSBP relates to when a member's applying for retirement pay on the DD form 2656. So last month, our retirement section reviewed this full form, but we're only going to review the SBP portion of this form. So if a member has the RCSBP election option C or B, whether they made the election or were automatically enrolled, they cannot make a new election on the DD form 2656. They have to mark what their previous election was in section 5, block 33. But if a member was under option C with spouse coverage and they got divorced since then, they still have to mark that they were option C, but next to that block is going to be a block asking if their marital status has changed since that initial election, and they will just mark yes on that. And then if a member has RCSBP option A, again, if they made the election for option A or were automatically enrolled, this is where they're going to make their election for SBP on block 34 and 35. So if you have a current serving military member or a member that's in the retired awaiting pay status and they pass away, it needs to be verified if they had RCSBP. Our office, along with AFPC and the casualty reps at the unit, should be verifying. Obviously, the unit level will not have access to the retired awaiting pay, so we can verify that for you. But we're going to verify if the member was under option B or C and if the beneficiaries are able to claim this benefit. So for our office, we do non-duty status casualties. So if a member isn't on orders when they pass away, and we work the retired away pay status casualties. The CAR or the beneficiary will have to send us the following forms, and those forms can be found on the link in the middle of the screen. This is just for a spousal coverage claim. So if we have a claim that's for children or disabled children or a former spouse or an insurable interest, it's going to require different forms, and our office will notify you of what forms are needed for those different circumstances, but all that information is also in that DFAS link. And once we receive that documentation, our office will submit the RCSBP claim to DFAS to start the annuity for the beneficiaries. But if you have any retirees that are in pay status and they're receiving their retired pay, the beneficiary will need to log into DFAS and report the retiree's death along with submitting their SBP claims. So when members become eligible for RCSBP, they're very concerned about what this is going to cost them. So there's two different ways that a member can research how much this benefit will cost them and their families. So the first one is going to be on this DFAS link. That's very helpful. And the other one's going to be a link on MyPERS. So this calculator, if you see it at the top, you can see that you can kind of play around with the pay grade, years of service, and the points, and kind of project and estimate what the member might be at that time. Then they're going to select what their beneficiary option is. And at the bottom, you can see if the member does option A, this is what it's going to cost them, option B, and option C. At the very bottom, you'll see the net retired pay, it's an estimate of what the member's retired pay is going to be. And then at the very bottom, you'll see the annuity as to what the beneficiaries would be receiving. So we're just going to go over some frequently asked questions that our office gets. If the member misses the 1-year mark on a life event to make any changes to their election, what age do they have to wait until in order to make the changes? So if they do not make that election within the 1 year, they will have to wait until the 3rd year of receiving retired pay. So they had already received 2 full years of retired pay, and on that 3rd year, between the 25th month and the 36th month, is when they can elect to cancel or terminate their SBP. And to do this, they'll go and submit a DD form 2656-2, and they'll send it to DFAS at the link below. Again, our office does not work with changing elections or canceling elections when a member is in retired pay status. If my children are no longer eligible and they have aged out as a beneficiary, can I make a new election? Unfortunately, no. A member cannot make a new election for the sole reason that the children are no longer eligible. But if the member does have spouse and child coverage, remember that child coverage is a free add-on. So there's no extra or additional cost when they have spouse and child. So this is one of our biggest questions. We get a lot of tickets on when a member is filling out their DD form 2656 and they have to put what their previous election was. They don't know where to go. So for retirees, the total force technicians, they know how to look up the RCSBP elections for the members, and they'll inform them. And then if the member is unit assigned, MPF can look this up. It's in MIL-PDS under relocations, employment, retirement separations, and survivor benefit plan. But in that red circle, it can get very confusing because you see how it says option E. And it's not an option we went over, but option E means non-response automatic option C. So it just says it right next to it. So if you see an option that you're unsure of, it will say the definition right next to that. And then under that, it'll have the beneficiaries. So if this person was the non-response, they never made an election within 90 days, the system gave them an automatic election. They had a spouse and a child in MIL-PDS at the time of the automatic election, and that's what MIL-PDS manually or automatically put in. If a member made an election and they submitted a DD form 2656-5 to our office, you'll see that it will say option C, and then it under could say spouse only, and then we put the date that the form was signed. Is a member with a disability reserve retirement eligible for RCSBP? Yes, as long as they meet the minimum eligibility for it. But they have to submit the DD form 2656-5 with their retirement application, because the system will not notify them because they haven't officially made the 20 satisfactory years. What if a member can't find their 20-year letter? So if a member logs into the NERP application initially and forgets to pull their 20-year letter, there is another route to go through and get it at a later time. They can log into MyPERS in VPC under action request, and there's a link that says request a 20-year letter reissue, and this is what the 20-year letter will look like when they pull it up. Okay, does anybody have any questions? You can unmute or type in the chat. So in the chat, I see, will these slides be sent out to the field? Yes, they will be. The recording will be sent out to the field to members to be able to rewatch it.
So for everyone that's listening, I just wanted to touch on something real quick. We just gave you a lot of information and a lot of family situations with a member. A lot of times our members, they don't remember what they did or didn't do. They say they didn't get the information. So I realize that you're all not going to be an expert right away at this, and it might take some practice. But I want to encourage that if you have any sort of family change checklist at your DEERS ID card station, that you add RCSBP and these sorts of considerations that we want members to make when they have a life-changing event. Okay, so what does that mean? What do I expect from you guys? I at least at the very minimum expect you have the slides, you have some tools to kind of guide the member to these resources so that they can make the best decision for their family, as we've already kind of shared. If they're a retiree and they have that sort of event and they're already receiving their pay, then as we've discussed, they'll have to do that through that change through DFAS. So if you really don't mind, we would appreciate if you add that information, at least as a consideration, if it's not already on your, and if you don't have a checklist, I'm sure I have a sample I can send out of just a bunch of things that the members need to consider when they have marital status changes and children either, added or when their children grow up. So just something to consider for you all out there in the field, because you are the front line to the members. Some of the questions that we're getting are very basic questions that we hope that by providing this training that you all are more armed and empowered to help with some of those questions that come up. And I think I saw a question in the chat. Let's see. Okay, on one of the slides, we actually, on the DFAS website, it shows you a link to the site that shows how the premiums are calculated. Sergeant Dempsey, I don't know if you want to flip back real quick to that slide. That's from the 139th for support.
And Chief, there was one more question right before that asking about how the RCSBP premiums will be paid by the member, and that is through their retired pay.
So everyone, I want to hit on something we didn't really touch on, but I want to kind of just hit on it, and then y'all tell me if I'm going too far. But so let's remember now, for our folks that get a reserve retirement, okay, and like we gave you an example, if they were 45 and then they made a deferred election of A and they didn't want any coverage and they die at 47, there's no coverage. But let's say our member has option C, and they're going to sit in the gray area for a long time, until at age 60, they start receiving their pay. And then they elect SBP. They're going to pay for both. They're going to pay for RC SBP coverage because during that gray area time, they were covered. They had this benefit if they were to have passed away. But since they made it to their retirement pay age, now they're going to pay for a different coverage. So a lot of times people see two different things on their LESs and they're not quite sure why. That's why, because they were covered, but there was no pay during the gray area for it to be deducted from. I don't think we really hit that, but I just wanted to touch on that real quick.
Chief, I just wanted to add on, because that's a good point that a lot of people do forget and don't realize that we get a lot of those questions, right? Like, I didn't realize I didn't want this. I didn't think I elected it. And now I'm having to pay for it when I'm getting my retired pay. On top of that too, just wanted to remind everyone that using any of these calculators that are out there, it's an estimate, right? So if it estimates their retired pay and then the amount that they're actually going to be deducted from that retired pay, remind everyone this is truly just an estimate. I mean, there's no way for anyone to truly calculate. We're not DFAS, so we're just trying to help people see an idea of how much and that percentage that's coming out. Over.
Thanks, Senior Seeker. That's a great point, because a lot of times members want us to counsel them and give them exactly what their situation is going to be, and we just can't. We can't possibly do that, like you just said. That's we don't do final calculations. That's what DFAS does.
These are good questions. Do we have any more? Oh, all right. So Sergeant Mixel, I know I'm going to mispronounce that. I'm sorry. So first off, I want to go ahead, Chief. I was just going to say, first off, talking about the TFSC and the representatives that you're contacting, just a little plug and reminder that these are contractors. They're not all personnelists, right? And so we're trying our best to give them the tools and information as well to answer your questions or the members' questions that are calling in. So we did actually just have this same training with all of the TFSC representatives just a couple weeks ago. So there may be some conflicting stuff currently that may have been said versus what we're saying now, and hopefully going forward you don't get that. Outside of that, then, are we able to confirm how RCSPP premiums are paid by the member?
Yeah.
So
I've never heard of the lump.
Yeah.
The lump calculation. I don't know if there's any credence to that.
I'm not tracking that either, and I don't know that we can truly speak to that, only because, again, it's DFAS that is actually taking this out of the pay. So we don't want to put anything out there that isn't true. There may be options for them members as they're going through and receiving their retired pay, but ultimately not sure. Yeah, we've not heard of the lump sum payment. And it's, like I said, it's possible the TFSC agent was misunderstanding the question and talking about SGLI. It's hard to say. Like I said, we're doing our best to try and educate them as well. Great questions. Any others? Oh, well, thank you, Sergeant Maxwell. I'm sure I'm mispronouncing. I'm sorry. So the ARC has given me an RCSPP informational package on multiple accounts. Within the informational package, it explains the premiums will be taken out in a lump sum. Sergeant Broadstack, if you're on, do you want to talk to that? Is that what we actually do provide them, that option?
Ma'am, that is not in the guide stated that the premiums are taken out in lump sums. The premium would be taken out in a monthly increments. As you said previously, that is a question for DFAS. If you would like to pay in lump sum, as it comes out, it would just be in increments, monthly increments, until that balance from the 20 years of service until retired pay age is paid.
Thanks, ma'am. Yeah, and Christina, sorry, I don't know last name on there, but yeah, I think that's exactly what may have happened. The question, if someone is catching up on an option C where they were paying for it before they actually started receiving retired pay, it's very possible that DFAS does some lump sums or offers people a lump sum, but again, that's really not our part, so we don't want to speak to a definite yes or no on that. So. But thank you all for that information and crosstalk. Anything else? Thank you all so much for letting us know that this training is helpful. We really appreciate it. I know it's probably been a long time coming, and it's not the easiest program. We put a lot of effort into trying to make this training and the slides at least somewhat flowable, and an approach to try to help you all to help the members, because I know that is hard when we don't even know it to begin with. So there's a lot of stuff. Hopefully, yes, thank you. Very informative. We appreciate it. Let us know if there's anything too that we've been missing. We'll continue to improve any trainings we have. And as Sergeant Dempsey mentioned too, last month we had the 2656 training on how to submit it for your retirement. And we talked a little bit about just SBP. And now we're talking the RCSBP, and just knowing that they are technically two different programs, right? And so our members are eligible for the RCSBP, and then potentially they're eligible for SBP. Any other questions? All right, well, we can give it a few more minutes if anyone still has questions, but at this point, just want to say thank you all for joining us. We really appreciate that you're taking the time out of your day as well to listen and hopefully learn what we can help inform you guys as well, and anything we can relay. So please always let us know if there's anything that you feel would be beneficial as we continue to improve on our trainings and providing information out there. We're always trying to just get as much out that we can and figure out what is helpful for everyone at the units to help our members. So appreciate all of your time, and I hope this was good if it means that there's not many questions. So the biggest thing I know is that we gave you a lot of information, and that is definitely why we are going to make sure that the slides and video are posted so you guys can all reference them. Absolutely, getting the slides. That's the most important thing, I think, because there was a lot of information and we tried to go as slow as we can, but just to be able to reference back to it when you need to. All right, if there's no further questions, we really appreciate your time and have a great day.
Thanks, team.